began in 1961.
For millions of years, volcanic eruptions have churned up from the Pacific Ocean floor to continually create and recreate the most isolated group of islands on Earth. These steaming fires and sulfuric fumes, the visible traces of a primordial force at the center of the planet. Perhaps this was the force that drew Polynesian sailors across thousands of miles of uncharted ocean to Hawaii, 7 centuries before Columbus saw San Salvador. Any further explanation must lie locked forever in the legends of the pagan gods who are still commemorated here. Here amid the volcanoes, a perfect setting for the most inexplicable of all athletes to play out their drama. Men and women driven by burning will to test themselves in the fire of a marathon run. And to do so only after 112 miles of cross-country bicycle riding through oven-like lava fields in suffocating midday heat. A cross-country bicycle ride preceded by an early morning swim of nearly 2.5 miles in the churning waters of the Pacific Ocean. Why do they do it? What draws a person to force the body through such extreme pain?
I'm here to see what my limits are. It's a personal challenge. This is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy. This is who I am and what I do.
From the resort towns and lava fields of the Kona Coast on the Big Island of Hawaii, a unique event, the Endurance Triathlon, today on ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Judy Blumberg and Michael Siebert have a great opportunity at the World Ice Dancing Championship in Hartford, Connecticut. With only the long free dance program to go, they're in 3rd place with a real chance to win a medal. If they do, it'll be the 4th for the U.S. in the 1981 World Figure Skating Championship. The United States hasn't won that many in a world competition since 1967. You'll see if they can do it today on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition. This is ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Brought to you by Natural Light Beer, brewed with only natural ingredients for a smooth, clean taste. Natural Light. Taste is why you'll switch. By Lincoln Mercury, who invites you to see and drive the totally new Lynx. And by Allstate, we insure your home, your car, your health, your business, and your life. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Who? You switched to Natural Light.
Sure, Natural Light tastes better to me. That's why I switched.
And it's all natural ingredients. Tell me, Gordy, now that you've retired, life's a little more peaceful, huh?
Much more.
2 Natural Lights, please.
Give me a check.
Check.
Natural Light. Taste is why you'll switch.
I'm learning to take it easy.
Him too. Check.
Introducing the totally new Lynx from Lincoln Mercury. Lynx is not only the most fuel-efficient American-built wagon, Lynx is the first one with front-wheel drive and fully independent suspension. Starting today, the world belongs to an American car. Starting today, the world belongs to Lynx.
You're looking at the beach adjacent to Kailua Pier in the little resort town of Kailua Kona on the western coast of the Big Island of Hawaii. 326 of the most unusual athletes you'll ever meet have gathered at dawn to begin the 4th annual Endurance Triathlon. And it's fascinating to listen to the words of just a few as they discuss their preparation for this test of will and stamina.
The hardest part of the whole event is the training.
Well, my training day consists of getting up at about 5:30 in the morning and running for an hour and a half.
Well, I get up about 4:30 every morning and start my swimming training early.
At noontime, I would go off to a local high school and I would swim a mile or a mile and a half, go back to work, and then in the evening I had a stationary bicycle since I lived in
I've been running about 10 miles a day, biking about 20 to 25, and swimming about 3,000 yards.
Training near the end of this was approximately 1 to 2 miles of swimming a day, and 40 to 80 miles of biking a day, and 10 to 12 miles of running a day.
Well, to sum it up, I've been putting in close to 40 hours a week for the last 6 months, which should tell you something.
And then at the end of every week, I do one long distance, like I do a straight 2-mile swim through, an 80-mile ride or 100-mile ride, and then do a 20-mile run.
I did a sub-3-hour marathon about 3 weeks ago, which convinced me that I've got the running down pat.
I'm going to finish whatever it takes to finish this thing. Quitting is not something I came here to do.
Hello, I'm Jim Lampley. Specifically, this is what we're talking about. 2.4 miles of ocean swimming, 112 miles of cross-country bicycle riding, and then a marathon run, 26.2 miles. Each of the 3 separate tests of endurance completed in continuous fashion in the course of one long day. Behind me are more than 300 people who are ready to try it. There are various other triathlon-type events, various other events combining separate endurance disciplines held in the United States, but all of the competitors here seem to agree that this is the most demanding endurance test of its kind in the country. Working with us are 3 separate experts who can comment on each of the 3 separate disciplines. First, Diana Nyad, who's in the water.
Swimming is the shortest segment of the triathlon, both in terms of distance and in terms of time. However, many of the athletes here feel it may be the most difficult segment. First of all, the skill required in long-distance swimming is not acquired in a year or two, as long-distance running and cycling may be for a novice. Also, swimming in the open ocean is a very different story than training in a pool, as 90 to 95% of these competitors have done. Even though we have a beautiful day here today and we don't have a terribly rough ocean, swimming in the ocean requires keeping a straight line, which is very difficult for an inexperienced swimmer. It also requires tremendous upper body strength, and most of these people, I would say, are runners and cyclists. And when they get out of the water, that's when they'll go to their lower body and really start working the legs.
We'll be hearing later from former Wimbledon champion Arthur Ashe, an experienced cyclist who will comment on the specific demands of the long middle section of the event, the bicycle ride, and also from Dr. Robert Arnott, a physician with special training in sports medicine, who will talk about the tremendous demands of the marathon run at the end of the long day. All of the competitors here are unusual. Some are simply incredible, such as the man in the goggles there, Harry Cordellos, blind since birth, a 43-year-old transit clerk from San Francisco, California, who will enter the water with a guide on a surfboard to keep him on course. Now, the start of the event is only moments away. It is 7:15 a.m., and as the gun sounds, all 326 competitors enter the water and begin the long day. Some of them, those who are serious about winning, hope to exit the ocean within an hour and get on to the bicycle ride. Others only hope to come out of the water at some time later in the morning with enough energy to last through the rest of the day.
Well, Jim, the faster swimmers here are going out at a definite sprint to try to find some clear water. Don't forget, the good swimmers have a relatively short time to build up a lead over the cyclists and runners in their specialty. Everybody else is going to have to deal with rough water and wake from all the other churning arms and legs. But basically, I'd have to say that every competitor is feeling tremendously relieved to have finally started.
Behind the rest of the swimmers, Harry Cordellos' guide helps him along. For him as for the rest, this is only the beginning.
You know, I happened to tell my Allstate agent about how everything I have 2 of.
Hi, Dad.
Like 2 cars, he asked? Maybe Allstate's 2-car discount can save you money on insurance. I compared. Allstate saves me more. I can use the money.
Noah, dinner!
One wife.
Compare. Allstate's multi-car discount may save you more money. For ideas that make good sense today, you're in good hands with Allstate.
Feeling any better?
This cold's the worst.
Here's some aspirin for the aching and fever.
But I'm also sniffling, sneezing, coughing. My head's stuffy, and tonight I gotta rest.
I was supposed to get you a sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, stuffy head fever so you can rest medicine.
That's a NyQuil. Relieves aches and fever plus other symptoms. Aspirin doesn't.
NyQuil.
Sure wish I had some.
Be right back. NyQuil, the nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, stuffy head fever so you can rest medicine.
1948. Harry Truman was president. Joe DiMaggio hit 320. Gas was 25 cents a gallon. And Michelin came out with a new kind of tire, the Radial. Over the years, Radials have saved billions of gallons of gas. And today, more than half the tires on the road are Radials. Keep it up, America. The more we ride on Radials, the more fuel we save. Michelin's been making the tire for the 80s since 1948. Michelin, we put America on Radials.
It's 2,500 miles from the mainland United States to the largest and southernmost island in the chain that makes up the group called Hawaii. The Big Island, the island called Hawaii. And we're on the west coast, the swim course reaching straight out from Kailua Pier, 1.2 miles into the ocean to the turnaround point around this large boat and then back to the pier. It's 7:40 a.m. and the leader, Thomas Schmidt, 26 years old, a high school swim coach from South Pasadena, California, is making the turn well ahead of the rest of the field.
Schmidt is maintaining a turnover rate here of 55 strokes a minute, which is even fast for a long-distance swimmer, but you might even think he's swimming a 200-meter sprint at this point. Yesterday, we had a chance to get a few words with Schmidt about his training for this event.
I've done mostly swimming. I swim about 4 miles a day, about 5 days a week. And I've done a lot of ocean swimming, but most of my training recently has been in a pool.
A mark of how great Schmidt's lead is, those chasing him are in the background of the shot, having yet to make the turn around the boat. Meanwhile, waiting at the bicycle rack, a man who has become something of an expert on bicycles as a result of rehabilitation from his well-publicized heart attack, Arthur Ashe.
When the contestants finish the 2.4-mile ocean swim, they will come to this, which is perhaps today the world's largest bike parking lot. And then they will begin the second leg of the triathlon, the 112-mile bike race, which will be a severe test of what's called lower body strength, especially the quadricep muscle, that muscle that runs from the groin area to about the knee. And incidentally, there are more contestants here today who are experts at cycling than there are contestants who are expert at either swimming or the marathon. And speaking of the marathon, we have with us today Boston internist and sports medicine doctor Bob Arnott, who himself is a 2-hour, 30-minute marathoner. No small feat. Bob?
The marathon used to be considered the toughest event of all. These athletes will have depleted large amounts of carbohydrates during the swim and the bicycle race. Here, for the very first time, they're supporting their entire body weight. There's no water. There's no bicycle to support that. It will be a struggle against fuel conservation. They'll be running on fats alone. This means that the speed will be considerably slower than that in the other events. You won't see a record in the marathon.
The marathon run, no doubt, in the back of the minds of all the competitors, but still hours away. Even for the leader, Thomas Schmidt, our helicopter pulls back to demonstrate that he is now within sight of the Kailua Pier, which represents the end of the swim and the beginning of the bicycle ride.
You know, Jim, Tom Schmidt was once ranked 5th in the world at 1,500 meters and was also AAU national champion in the same event. He is obviously the best swimmer in this field, but I think he'll gain even extra ground today in this relatively calm sea because of his wide, crab-like stroke, which is a mark of the 1,500-meter swimmer. A marathon swimmer's stroke, like mine, for example, uses very high elbows so that if you were in a fairly rough sea, you wouldn't be catching the waves with this lateral-type movement that he uses.
Like the vast majority of the competitors here, Schmidt is a newcomer to the triathlon, but at his present pace, he will exit the water with a time close to the 51-minute record established by last year's winner, David Scott. Incidentally, it is a mark of how brutal and unforgiving the event can be that Scott so damaged his body in winning the triathlon, he was unable to return this year. It is more than 2 minutes back in the water to the second-place swimmer, Domino Specca, a 23-year-old former University of Pennsylvania swimmer from Coronado, California. And from Specca, but a short distance in the water, to the third-place swimmer, 20-year-old Joseph Rogers of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And then an even shorter distance behind Rogers to the 4th and 5th place swimmers, Kim Bushong and Mark Montgomery, 2 lifeguards swimming together from El Segundo, California. At the front of the pack, Tom Schmidt is almost ready to exit the water.
And many of the swimmers back in the field are going to be very drained from this swimming, but Schmidt, very efficient, very talented, and very well trained at the swimming, I'm sure has plenty left for the bike, and I'm sure he figured before this race that even if he swam at 5 or 6 minutes slower than he did, would not gain any more energy. His time, 51 minutes, 50 seconds, very fast, and I'm sure a very near all-out effort with plenty to spare for the bike and the run.
Diana, I don't think Tom missed those water showers by accident. He's predominantly a swimmer, and he doesn't really understand the significance of getting that salt water off his body, which would prove to be a major irritant to any bike rider facing a 112-mile bike race in this, the second leg of this grueling triathlon.
You're looking at the enemy of your spark plug, sooty carbon. It robs power and mileage. Motorcraft spark plugs fight the enemy. With Motorcraft's extended tip design, carbon is actually burned away as you drive. Motorcraft spark plugs, for the future of your car, for sure.
London, what an exciting place to be. London fog, what an exciting way to look. Everything from new lightweight raincoats in fabulous new colors to sensational outdoors unlimited weekend jackets with all the right details. And great-looking action jackets, too. Enter the exciting London Fog Weekend Windfall now to win this AMC Jeep Renegade filled with AMF Leisure Time products. London Fog Weekend Windfall going on now at participating stores.
The Kansas City Royals, the Philadelphia Phillies, a rematch that's World Series.
I think people are enjoying this, and I'm working my tail off.
On the Super Teams. Then on ABC's International Boxing, the U.S. takes on Venezuela in amateur action. On ABC's Wide World of Sports, rev up for one of stock car racing's premier events, the Atlanta 500. And from pumping the pedal to pumping iron, the World Cup Bodybuilding Championships. Super Teams, team boxing, and teaming excitement. ABC Sports has it all tomorrow.
It's 10 minutes after 8 o'clock in the morning, and under the shower on Kailua Pier, the men who have followed Tom Schmidt out of the water are gathering. Damina Spenka in second place welcomes Joseph Rogers in third place. Now the fourth and fifth place swimmers, farthest away from the camera, Mark Montgomery, nearest to the camera, Kim Bushong. They are about 3 minutes behind this man, Tom Schmidt, who will have the bicycle course to himself for a few moments.
And as Schmidt leaves the pier, he looks a bit unsure of himself, not quite knowing what he's going to do here. He's fiddling around with his strap and his gear. And he knows that he's facing 112 miles in 80-degree plus weather, very humid, and he's not really sure how he's going to fare because he is, first of all, a swimmer and not a biker.
This is Tom Bowie heading into the pier in 6th position. Now, last year he finished 5th with a very strong showing. This year he's trained even harder, and I'm sure he's learned a great deal about pacing himself throughout the day. Very important in this type of event.
Tom Bowie, one of the most cheerful of all competitors. Meanwhile, on the pier, Kim Bushong searches for his bicycle amid the more than 300 bicycles lined up here on Kailua Pier. And in the foreground, his partner, Mark Montgomery, the two of them dressed in identical biking outfits as they set out together.
Scott Rabelais is finishing the swim here in 10th position. He's approximately 6 minutes behind Tom Schmidt. 6 minutes being a long time in the swim, but after 6 hours on that bike, 6 minutes will be nothing.
Here's your first look at Jim Kesslering, who left the water in 7th place as he readies for the bicycle ride. Out on the course, the leader, Tom Schmidt.
And whatever problems he may have had from the start, he seems to have ironed them out right now.
Now here is a look at the first woman out of the water, 18-year-old Shawn Wilson from Sacramento, California. She's all ready to go out on the bike ride, but she seems to have lost a shoe, and now Shawn Wilson is headed back toward the dressing quarters. This will cost her valuable time. Somewhere in those blue plastic bags, or perhaps inside the dressing quarters, her left shoe, and if she can't find it, she'll be in serious difficulty. Now she's getting some help from an official. There's the shoe. Shawn Wilson, first woman out of the water, will have a chance to take off on her bicycle now. Obviously one of the most important competitions within the competition, that to see who will be the first woman finisher. Last year, Robin Beck, the first woman finisher, was 12th overall. And here's another woman, Linda Sweeney, 22 years old from Tucson, Arizona. She, like Shawn Wilson, primarily a swimmer. Now they get ready for what will be one of the most difficult parts of the competition for them, the 112-mile bicycle ride.
And cruising along here, still in first place, is Tom Schmidt. pedaling easily and evenly here. Looking down at his bike, I'm not quite sure what the problem is, but there is definitely a problem.
Meanwhile, Arthur, if you look back down the hill, you can see how much of the 3-minute lead Schmidt had when he left the water has already been devoured by these two men. Kim Bushong in the black helmet on the far side of your screen, and in the foreground, Mark Montgomery, the two lifeguards from El Segundo, California, closing in on this man, the leader, Tom Schmidt. Schmidt still looking down at his bike, perhaps keeping his head down for aerodynamic effect, but losing his lead steadily to Bushong and to Montgomery. We are less than a quarter of the way in to the bicycle run, so this is a dramatic move on the part of Bushong and Montgomery. And now from our helicopter, you see how rapidly they have made up the ground, and now Montgomery goes past Schmidt, and there goes Bushong. So the two men from El Segundo, California, have put Schmidt back in third place as they pedal along together. This portion of the triathlon is unknown to most competitors. Mark Montgomery spoke of that yesterday.
Actually, there is somewhat of a fear. I'm relatively sure I can complete all three, but I'm afraid of the heat and going out too hard. Never paced anything like this, so just have to wait and see. It's the first time. There's nothing you can compare it with.
It's still early in the morning, and there are many hours left.
Me, I take care of myself, here and here.
That's why I use Skin Bracer from Menon. It's for men who take care of their skin every day.
You have to. Shaving is rough. Skin Bracer tightens your pores. That's the tingle. It refreshes your skin and smooths it. Hey, it's not cologne. It's skin care that feels good. You need that after shaving.
You smell terrific.
Thanks. I needed that.
Menon Skin Bracer takes care of men who take care of their skin.
10th frame. The odds were 12,000 to 1, but anchorman Lefty Pinder beat the odds. Looks like a Strollite night.
When things are going right, looks like a Strollite night. Looks like a Strollite night.
Strollite, a great tasting beer that doesn't fill you up.
Looks like a Strollite night when good times come along. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer.
The greatest American hero is coming this very Wednesday.
Slightly more than a third of the way into the 112-mile bicycle ride, the leaders remain Mark Montgomery and Kim Bushong of El Segundo, California. There is a specific rule against drafting on another competitor to help yourself out during the bicycle race, and officials will be watching these two close friends very carefully to see that they don't use each other's wind resistance to help each other out as they go along. Meanwhile, behind them, at the Hapuna way station a few miles back, the third-place rider, Tom Schmidt. Diana Nyad is there as he steps off his bicycle.
You came out way ahead on the water. How you doing on the bike?
All right, hanging in there.
Are you worried about the guys behind you? You thinking of John Howard and everybody?
Yeah, I don't want too many people to go by me.
How about the two guys who passed you? When did that happen?
About 18 miles into the bike.
You still feeling all right?
The Hapuna way station is just short of the 40-mile mark on this bicycle ride, so Schmidt has more than 70 miles to go on his bicycle before he can then leave the bicycle behind and get on with the business of a marathon run. You heard Diana Nyad mention the one competitor who is on the minds of all those in the lead. His name is John Howard. He's a former three-time Olympic bicyclist, and his figure looms large in the background as those who have left the water ahead of him think that he may be coming to get them sooner or later. It is approaching midday as the competitors get into the heat of the lava fields far out on the bicycle course. The bicycle course consists of a 56-mile ride to the town of Javi from Kailua. And as you can see, the last 20 miles of that 56-mile ride must be negotiated up a fairly steep grade to the little town of Javi. The wind is at the backs of the riders as they go up the hill. It will make the downhill ride more difficult than it may seem to those of us who are only watching. Now John Howard has suddenly appeared among the leaders. He is in fourth place. He left the water after an hour and 10 minutes in 89th place. So already he has passed 85 bicycle riders with more than half of the bicycle segment still ahead.
Jim, Howard's cycling skills are exceptional, but the big difference this year, I feel, is the swimming. Last year, an hour and 51 minutes in the water. He says he almost drowned. He swallowed so much salt water. He trained so hard this year and got coaching. He brought his time down 41 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes. That's what I call discipline.
A year ago, he finished 3rd overall in the event. He thinks the improvement in swimming may win it for him. You just saw him pass Tom Schmidt, going by him as though Schmidt were standing still, and he has moved into 3rd place. Arthur, his cycling technique is a thing of beauty.
Yes, Jim, it certainly is. We're looking at a man who really knows his craft. He is very smooth, very steady, very fluid. There's no wobble here. He's extremely sure of himself and in perfect union with his bike.
And now it is but a short distance to the 2 men ahead of him whom he is chasing. The men who have been in the lead throughout much of the bicycle segment. Kim Bushong in the black helmet, Mark Montgomery in the white helmet. Secure in their lead for a time being, but perfectly aware, as are all the competitors in the race, that this man is coming. You may have heard a brief segment of John Howard's voice at the beginning of the show saying that he has been working out for 40 hours a week for the past 6 months. Bushong and Montgomery are among many who might have read details of those workouts in Cycling Magazine. Those details are a psychological factor for many of those in the event who can't believe what they've read of John Howard and are only beginning to learn now how formidable a competitor he is.
Look at this. Howard looks like a shark coming up here. He's so aggressive. You know, as impressive as the pace has been that these two guys have been keeping in the lead, they look like Sunday cyclists compared to Howard.
This is a man who was a member of the Olympic bicycling team in 1968, 1972, and 1976, called by Cycling Magazine the American cyclist of the decade of the 70s, and he's about to show you exactly why. And it is with obvious respect that Bushong and Montgomery give up control of the lead to the man who at this point clearly deserves it, John Howard. Last year he finished 3rd, and we asked him if he was disappointed with that finish after having been the favorite in the eyes of many before the event.
Well, I was disappointed in the sense that I wasn't prepared properly for the triathlon. I didn't balance the 3 events, and I think the real change this year has been a careful balancing of all 3. And I hope to minimize the loss in the water. And of course, I'll do well on the bike, and I think probably I can manage to get through the marathon in less than 3.5 hours this year instead of 4.5. So I think that'll be enough, hopefully, to win it.
There are perhaps 6 hours left in this triathlon, and already it is clear who is the man to beat.
You want your import car to run its best. So insist on top-quality Napa brand parts. The trusted name in domestic parts is now the name to trust in import parts. When the name is Napa, the standard is quality.
I got my passport. I'll be right over.
For all those trips that are too big for the feet and too small for the car, Honda presents the Passport.
I told you we needed a passport!
It has an electric starter, and it gets up to 130 miles to the gallon.
I'm sorry, monsieur. You cannot park here without a passport.
The Honda Passport. Get one. It'll take you almost anywhere.
It's tax time again. Are you afraid of being audited? Watch ABC's World News tonight, Monday.
The Florida Keys and Milwaukee are a whole country apart. But to these guys, they both mean something great. The Keys mean stone crab, big and fresh. And Milwaukee means beer, cold, crisp, old Milwaukee beer. And man, you can't have one without the other.
Whenever you think of the town of Milwaukee,
You think of beer.
and old Milwaukee tastes as great as its name.
You know what? Doesn't get any better than this.
I tell you, in most restaurants, I don't get no respect at all.
I was in one place, I asked you something cheap. They told me to look in a mirror. Well, at Bonanza, you get a lot of respect. For your budget, too. Listen.
Oh, it's much cheaper than the supermarket. And I don't have to cook it.
It's a good meal for the price that we paid.
It's cheaper to eat here. For two of us, yes, it is.
I enjoy eating out at Bonanza better. They cook it better than I do, too.
I tell you, you really get respect at Bonanza.
Action News with Dave Dials, weeknights at 5:30 on 7.
Diane and Ayat at the Hapuna Way Station.
Here comes John Howard. He is now what we'd have to call a fairly comfortable first place. John, what kind of lead are you trying to build in the bicycle?
I'd like about a 15-minute cushion.
Are you looking forward to the running already?
Oh, yes.
Is the heat getting to you?
Just a little bit. I think I'm handling it pretty well, though. I'm taking lots of liquid.
What are you drinking?
BRG, water, little Coke.
Obviously, it takes careful nutrition to stay in constant motion for anywhere from 10 to 24 hours. Yesterday, Dr. Bob Arnott gathered together the necessary calories for a triathlete.
One of the more difficult, if enjoyable, tasks that the triathlete faces is eating enough to train an extra 4 hours a day. Now, breakfast might begin here with an omelet, egg, toast, fruit, yogurt, and some ham. Lunch, a hamburger, tomatoes, some lettuce, and a pickle. And dinner here, completing the basic food groups with carrot, squash, some fish, a tomato, and broccoli. This is about 2,800 calories. A normal American diet, nothing particularly fattish about it. The triathlete needs an extra 4,000 calories to train enough to compete at this level. That might be grains, breads, cereals, pastas, the complex carbohydrates, as opposed to simple sugars, which might be candies or sodas. The 8,000 calories that you see on the table represent how much he needs to train every day of the year. In the competition itself, however, we're seeing 12,000 calories put out by the time that this athlete has reached the finish of the marathon course.
John Howard has built up a significant lead with still more than 40 miles of bicycle riding ahead. Now he rides alone through eerie black lava fields which radiate heat like the coils of an oven. It is almost noon, and while each of the competitors has been repeatedly warned what the heat would be like on the Big Island, few are likely to say they were ready for it. A thermometer placed in one of the lava beds behind Howard right now would register a figure somewhere over 120 degrees. Back at the Hapuna Way Station, Kim Bouchong waits for his companion Mark Montgomery as they prepare to continue their journey. Montgomery has disappeared from the view of our camera as he observes one of the inevitable necessities of a 10 to 12-hour day of competition. Meanwhile, another competitor has suddenly turned up at the way station, a man we haven't seen before who has obviously made great progress during the bicycle race. And he appears ready to leave the station before Bouchong and Montgomery. He is Scott Molina, 20 years old, from Pittsburgh, California. His biography form indicates that he's more of a marathon runner than a cyclist, but clearly he has made up tremendous ground during the cycle segment of the race. As Bouchong continues to wait for Montgomery to reappear, Scott Molina boards his bike and pulls away, and suddenly it is Scott Molina who has moved into second place, ahead of Bouchong and Montgomery. Far ahead, John Howard continues to build his lead. He's 33 years old. He lives in Austin, Texas. Poetically, he works as the American representative for a bicycle firm.
And Jim, even if you are the cyclist of the decade, you've got to watch your fluid intake. These 8 stations are every 5 miles along the bicycle route, and as you see here, John is taking it in while riding. And even though you have to slow down, it's a sacrifice well worth taking. In fact, it's a matter of survival.
I'd like to make a point here. This is a grueling competition for phenomenal athletes like Howard, but it's also a grueling experience for athletes who are more interested in finishing and personal goals. This is Emily Gale, a remarkable competitor.
Well, when I heard about it, read about it a couple of years ago, I couldn't believe anybody would give that a try. And 3 years ago, I couldn't even run a mile, and I said I wanted to run the Boston Marathon and did it. And a year later, I said I wanted to run across Death Valley, and Herb and I ran across Death Valley. And this year I said I wanted to do the triathlon, and I think every time you pursue a new goal and you attain it and get closer to it, you have prepared yourself mentally for the next step, and tomorrow's step is the triathlon.
And speaking of remarkable athletes, here's Harry Cordellis, who is blind and participating here as a special entrant. And after my heart attack, I feel a very special kinship with people who are handicapped and seek to go beyond their normal limits.
Yes, blindness is a disability. There's no way to get around it. If you want to call it a handicap or a disability, I don't waste the energy arguing over what kind of a word it is, but we know it's a limitation and we can't hide it. My whole goal is to, first of all, try to convince people that in spite of whatever limitation it causes, there is a way around it. Sure, I can't see to drive a car, and I can't see to run down the road. But when we can find a way to eliminate the need for eyesight in any activity, then all of a sudden that activity is no longer a handicapping problem.
With the help of his tandem partner, Pete Matty, Harry Cordellis presses on up the hill on the bike. Meanwhile, far ahead on the course, John Howard continues to pump away with amazing consistency. In less than an hour, he can get off of his bicycle. All that will remain for him then, 26.2 miles of running in oppressive heat. We'll be back for the conclusion of the Endurance Triathlon. Now let's go to Hartford, Connecticut for the World Ice Dancing Championship.
We're in the Civic Center in Hartford, Connecticut. The attendance, some 14,500 people. All of them come to see the 1981 edition of the World Ice Dancing Championship. Hello, I'm Jim McKay with former world and Olympic champion Dick Button. You know, I was thinking this afternoon, Dick, you and I have been covering ice dancing for just under 20 years now. And I think that in that time, maybe ice dancing has changed more than any other aspect of the figure skating sport. I mean, attendance alone, 14,500 people just to see the ice dancing. But more specifically, I was thinking about the fact that it's less something just light and lovely to look at and much more of a serious sport.
Well, it's competitively speaking, it's a relatively new sport, although ice dancing has been around for a long period of time. International competition began only in 1950, and it was admitted to the Olympic Games only in 1976. But during that period of time, interestingly enough, the rules of ice dancing have remained extremely restrictive. Nowhere can the ice dancers hide behind triple jumps like the single skaters can, or behind the high-flying throw leaps that pair skaters can do. Instead, they must concentrate on pure ice skating in the form of dance. They have to concentrate on theatrical moves, and as a result, it's become a highly dramatic event. And I think in that sense, it's changed more than any of the other elements of skating in just the last 20 years. And this competition is extremely good because the level of competition here is extraordinary. The top skaters here, Christopher Dean and Jane Torval of Great Britain, Irina Moiseeva and Andrei Meninkov of the Soviet Union, and Judy Blumberg and Michael Siebert of the United States. They are all superb top competitors, and the level of ice dancing here is absolutely first-rate.
First crack out of the box, we're going to see the leaders in the competition. Here they are, Jane Torval and Christopher Dean of Great Britain. The British used to dominate this ice dancing for many, many years, but it's been 12 years now since they've won the World Championship. Chris Dean used to be a bobby in Nottingham, England. But he gave that up. They skate full time now. Red sails in the sunset, remember? Some of us do.
Also, in representing the British style of ice dancing, they're quite different from the Soviets in that they take time to change their style and the elements of dancing. Remember, they're restricted to 4 different pieces of music representing different elements of ice dancing. And they don't feel it's necessary to throw everything into every movement. It's not chock-block full of movement. Rather, the elegance line of ice dancing is clear.
Torvald and Dean are coached by Mrs. Betty Calloway. She coached Ragosi and Chalet, the Hungarians, remember, who were the world champions last year. They, by the way, have turned professional. They don't skate in these amateur ranks anymore. Yet to come are the Americans Judy Blumberg and Michael Siebert, who, by the way, are in 3rd place. Remember, they could win a medal.
You're right, Jim. That medal is a real possibility, but it does appear unlikely that they'll be able to move up much higher than 3rd place and win the competition, even though the free dance portion of the event counts for 50% of the total score, since the leaders here are very high caliber and so far are putting on an outstanding performance. And also, don't forget that Bestemianova and Bukin of the Soviet Union are also superb dancers, are very close behind them in 4th place, and under the new scoring system, they need merely to get better marks in order to pass them.
There have been compulsory dances before this, and another phase called the set patterns. This, the final free skating performance. James Torville and Christopher Dean.
We are very proud of you, Peabody. Thank you, sir. Your design of the Firestone 721 is brilliant.
Well,
a tire using 7 around 2 wrapped by 1? Genius. Oh. 24 million on the road, Peabody. And we're grateful.
Chief,
Just one more thing. Sure. Now, Peabody, we want